In the dark of night, amidst a torrential downpour, a failed scholar desperately sought shelter from the storm. He stumbled blindly until he found himself before the gates of a grim-looking coffin house. This was a place for the dead, a place the living should avoid. But to escape the rain, the scholar hardened his resolve and knocked on the heavy doors. The one who answered was a disheveled old man, who coldly informed the scholar that this place did not welcome the living. The scholar pleaded, begging only for a single night's lodging to wait out the storm. Seeing his desperate state, the old man's heart softened, and he finally led the scholar to a guest room. But before leaving, the old man left him with a strange and chilling warning. After the midnight hour, no matter what you see or hear, you must not make a sound. Though filled with doubt, the scholar agreed to the terms. In the dead of night, the sound of ringing bells suddenly echoed from the courtyard. Driven by curiosity, the scholar forgot the old man's warning and crept to the window to peek outside. The scene before him made his blood run cold. There in the courtyard, a Taoist priest was ringing a bell, leading a line of white-robed corpses that hopped forward in eerie unison. It was the legendary corpse herding of Shangxi. The scholar was terrified out of his wits and accidentally made a noise. To his horror, he found himself suddenly standing in the courtyard, and the corpse-herding Taoist was about to strike him down. Just at that critical moment, the scholar jolted awake. It had all been a nightmare. The next morning, the scholar thanked the old man and prepared to leave. But the old man offered a cryptic warning.
阴阳有别，知道越多，死得越快。
Just then, a woman came running, crying and kneeling before the old man, begging him to save her daughter. Her daughter, she explained, had been captured by an evil sorcerer to have her bones crushed and marrow consumed. The master set out immediately, and the scholar, intrigued, followed close behind. In the mountain forest, they came upon the very same group of corpse herders from the scholar's dream. The master quickly pulled the scholar to the ground, covering his mouth and signaling him to remain silent. But the sudden appearance of a venomous snake made the scholar cry out in fear. They were discovered! The Taoist priest immediately spotted them and ordered his men to eliminate the two intruders. Yet the old man showed no fear, instead exposing their entire scheme. Seeing his plot exposed, the Taoist priest ordered his men to attack. However, he had completely underestimated the old man's power. The master was a skilled fighter, felling the Taoist's men with just a few swift moves. In desperation, the Taoist priest rang his bell, commanding the corpses to attack. But the master remained calm, easily breaking the spell with a single red thread. As it turned out, these weren't corpses at all, but living people. The scholar pulled the veil from one of them and discovered the kidnapped daughter of the woman. The so-called corpse herding was nothing more than a crude trick using basic sorcery and narcotics to control living people for smuggling. Inside their bundles, they found large quantities of opium, a substance strictly forbidden by the imperial court. The master then discovered a lotus tattoo on the Taoist priest's arm, the Green Lotus Gang. The scholar looked at this hidden master in awe. He had single-handedly taken down an entire criminal operation. He immediately dropped to his knees, begging the master to accept him as his disciple. Faced with the scholar's persistence, the old man was beyond annoyed, but hoping to make him back down, he finally relented. He could take the scholar as his disciple, but on one condition.
到后山坟地熬过一宿，我就收你为徒。
The scholar agreed without a moment's hesitation. That night, carrying a single lantern, the scholar went alone to the grim and terrifying mass grave. The haunting sounds of the forest sent shivers down his spine. He accidentally kicked a human skull, which scared him half to death. Just as he was composing himself, he heard the sounds of a ritual nearby. He gathered his courage and followed the sound, only to see two men circling a female corpse in a red dress, seemingly performing a ghost wedding. However, before the eerie ceremony was over, one of the men suddenly drew a blade and stabbed his companion to death. The killer then turned, as if to do something to the corpse. But at that moment, the corpse suddenly sat up, plunging a dagger deep into the killer's chest. A life for a life. Just then, the master suddenly appeared and subdued the red-robed ghost with a single move. He told the terrified scholar to look closely, for this was no reanimated corpse. With that, he lifted the red veil, revealing a man's face. As it turned out, the two were grave robbers who had killed this man's sister for money. To avenge his sister, the man had disguised himself as a female ghost and set this trap for revenge. Later that night, the master was jolted awake by a nightmare, filled with terrifying visions of the Green Lotus Gang. Deeply unsettled, he began rummaging through his belongings, searching for something. He told his disciple he was looking for an old book that contained records of the Green Lotus Gang's emblem. This evil sect had been eradicated long ago, but now it had risen from the ashes, which was a terrible omen. They specialized in using supernatural tricks to fool the common people, and their methods were exceptionally cruel. As the master and his disciple were talking, the village chief suddenly burst in, panicked. Someone in the village was possessed. When they arrived, they found a villager tied up, yet still roaring like a wild beast and trying to bite anyone who came near. The situation was bizarre. The master immediately began a ritual to exorcise the evil spirit. However, when he struck the man with a powerful blow, the villager showed no reaction and only grew more violent. The master was shocked. This was no simple possession. Meanwhile, the village streets were empty, and every household had sealed its doors and windows, terrified of being tainted by the evil. The master took out his compass and discovered that the village's feng shui was in complete chaos, thick with a dark, heavy energy. The crazed villager managed to break free from his ropes. In the darkness, a young woman became his target, letting out a scream of utter despair. The master and disciple hid in the shadows, watching the crazed villager rampaging through the alley. The master sensed something was wrong. They found the possessed villager frantically digging up a tomb. These poor fools guard a mountain of treasure yet live in poverty. I deserve to get rich. A grave robber muttered to himself as he dug. He could scare the villagers away and steal the treasure from the tombs. But he didn't know that a real ghost was creeping up right behind him. Give me back my life. The grave robber was scared witless and fainted on the spot.
我当什么邪祟呢？原来是个装鬼吓人的小贼啊！
On the robber's body, the master found a piece of cloth bearing the Green Lotus Gang's emblem. The disciple recognized it at once as a rare silk produced only in the eastern provinces. The master and disciple decided to set out at once, heading east to track down the gang. The people in the procession had pale faces and moved with a stiff, unnatural gait, like walking corpses. They carried a bright red sedan chair, conducting a grim ghost wedding. The master acted decisively, knocking out a musician with a single blow. Only then did the disciple realize these people had no demonic aura. The master took some powder from his gourd and blew it gently, causing everyone to fall to the ground. These were all people who had lost their minds. They rescued the bride from the sedan chair, but the bride cried out that they had brought disaster upon themselves, for the mountain demon would eat them. It turned out there was a terrible legend in the area.
我们牛头山住着一个山妖大王，每年都要娶妻。
The disciple scoffed at the story, believing it was just a trick by some charlatan. But the master's expression was grave. He sensed something was deeply wrong. He decided he would go and meet this so-called mountain demon king. The disciple, hungry and exhausted, wanted to find an inn to rest first. But the master insisted they press on, saying that victory requires surprise and delay invites change. Just then, the disciple's foot caught on something in the grass. He looked down and saw a grim, grinning skull. The old man picked up the skull, his expression grave.
歪门邪道，山妖死不足惜。
As soon as he finished speaking, several dark figures suddenly leaped out from the woods, surrounding the master and his disciple. These creatures were hideous and frenzied, the very villagers controlled by the spell insects. A fierce battle was unavoidable. Though old, the master was incredibly agile. Wielding a peachwood sword, he fought the evil spirits with his righteous energy. After a heated battle, the creatures fell one by one, reverting to their human forms. The two found the mountain demon's lair. Inside a cave, the long-haired man was throwing living people into a large, boiling cauldron, brewing some kind of evil potion. He was the so-called mountain demon king. The master intervened. A heart-stopping battle began. The mountain demon king's dark arts were incredibly strange, and the master found himself in a difficult fight. But good always triumphs over evil, and in the end, the master defeated the demon king with his superior Taoist skills. The disciple didn't understand how one person could control so many fine. The master explained that it was all the work of the spell insects. The demon used a mother spell to control everyone who had a child spell inside them. With that, he found the still-writhing mother spell in a small wooden box. The disciple looked at the disgusting creature with disdain, thinking it was just a cheap trick. But the master's expression suddenly turned stern, and he shouted, "The spell poison is deadly. Do not underestimate it. You could be poisoned without even knowing." The master and disciple continued on their journey and arrived at an inn. The innkeeper warned them that the town had been unsafe recently and they must not go out at night, because of a painted-skinned demon that fed on human brains. That night, the master and disciple patrolled the town but found nothing. The next morning, when they returned to the inn, they were stunned by what they saw. Everyone in the inn was dead. The authorities soon arrived and treated the master and disciple as suspects. The master explained that they had been out all night hunting for the painted-skinned demon. The head constable, though skeptical, temporarily believed them after examining the bodies. Just then, at the foot of one of the corpses, the master found a piece of gold paper used in a coffin shop. The master picked up the gold paper and immediately sensed something was wrong. This wasn't ordinary gold paper from a coffin shop, but from a paper effigy store. He immediately led his disciple and the constables to the only paper effigy shop in town. However, when they arrived, they found only a seemingly ordinary shopkeeper inside. Just as the constables were about to make their move, the shopkeeper suddenly attacked. He was also a member of the Green Lotus gang. The master instantly engaged him in battle, and the two were evenly matched. The shopkeeper's fighting style was extremely bizarre, as he could control paper effigies to attack. It turned out the so-called painted-skinned demon was nothing more than a paper effigy, controlled by him using rare silk threads from the western regions. Just as the master was about to capture him, the shopkeeper used a smoke bomb to escape. Watching his enemy slip away once again, the master was filled with mixed emotions. He finally confessed his past to his disciple. The coffin house, he explained, had once been his home. Years ago, the Green Lotus gang had massacred his entire family, slaughtering dozens of his relatives. Only he, a young child, had survived by hiding under his mother's protection. Later, he was rescued by a righteous man who took him in as a disciple and taught him everything he knew. After completing his training, he returned to his hometown and lived as a quiet coffin keeper, all in the hope that one day he could find the murderers who had wiped out his family and avenge their deaths. The master and disciple continued their journey and encountered a strange peddler along the way. The peddler told them of a village ahead where the people neither ate nor drank, but spent their days worshipping a deity. Sensing something was amiss, the master and disciple immediately hurried to the village. The village was indeed shrouded in a strange atmosphere. All the villagers were kneeling on the ground as if possessed, bowing reverently to a statue that was neither male nor female, holding a lotus flower, the Green Lotus gang. Just then, a man in white approached them. He claimed to be an immortal messenger, and that this was a place where mortals could ascend to godhood. He warmly invited the master and disciple to join them and achieve immortality together. Playing along, the two followed the man into an ancestral hall. Inside, countless villagers were kneeling before the statue, chanting incessantly. One man, in a frenzy, stuffed a white powder into his mouth, his face contorted in an expression of pure ecstasy. This was no path to immortality. It was a cult controlling the villagers with drugs. The disciple awoke from a hazy dream to find himself lying safely in his bed at the inn. It turned out that everything that had happened was just a hallucination caused by an incense he had inhaled. He ran out of the room, his heart still pounding. The village chief told him that a celestial master had diverted a spring of immortality into the village well. All they had to do was burn incense, drink the immortal water, and eat smoky crimson, and they would achieve immortality. The disciple found this utterly absurd. He had personally seen villagers fall in agony after eating candles, some even choking to death. The master saw through the deception at once. The so-called immortal spring was just well water laced with a narcotic. He immediately exposed the village chief's lie. Another fierce battle ensued, and although the master was skilled, he was outnumbered. Just as he was about to be defeated, the disciple had a flash of insight, and used the hallucinogenic incense to disorient the assassins. As one of the assassins lay dying, he laughed maniacally, claiming that their great plan was already complete, and that even in death, the old immortal would avenge them. Meanwhile, a man named Water Buffalo was holding a funeral for his wrongly deceased younger brother. But the Taoist priest performing the rites claimed that the brother's spirit was too resentful to be buried. As he spoke, the coffin began to shake violently and even started to bleed. More terrifying still, in broad daylight, the corpse suddenly sat up. The villagers fled in terror. At that moment, the master and disciple happened to be passing by, and the priest immediately pointed at them, accusing them of disturbing the dead. But the master saw through the clumsy trick at a glance. He pointed out that this was no reanimated corpse, but that someone was manipulating it from beneath the coffin. That night, the man named Water Buffalo came to find the master and disciple, claiming he was being haunted by his wife's ghost and plagued by nightmares.